welcome to another episode of The Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabanzo, and this is my podcast. On the podcast, I interview musicians and music professionals to discuss topics ranging from marketing, business, the creative process, and all the things that empower us to do more of what we love, which is to make music. It's really intended to help independent music artists be better at all of those things. In this episode, I revisit a conversation with Lara Price. We discuss, among other things, hosting open jams and why jams make you a better musician and help you get gigs, why acoustic performances are great for otherwise electric bands or artists. We also talk about how music education helped her develop common language among the musicians that she works with, how labels can be helpful, networking advice for the shy musicians among us, and some great networking reminders. It's the third installment of my new Rewind episodes. Hopefully you have heard installments 1 and 2 and are enjoying them because they're a lot of work, but they've been fun to do, and I'll definitely do more of them. I'll likely return to, or rather rotate some new interviews in very soon because I'm starting to miss them. I think I needed a little break and didn't realize it until I did a few of these, but I am looking forward to getting back to it. So maybe next episode, maybe the one after that, we'll see. And on an episode or publishing note, a housekeeping note, if you're a regular, I was publishing on Fridays and then every other Fridays, and lately it's been a little wonky. Whenever I can get to it, I'm a little late for Friday, the last Friday that I would have normally published, and I'm probably going to keep doing that for the foreseeable future until I get a little bit of a change happening through the means of support, which reminds me this podcast is supported by listeners just like you. If you would like to learn more about how you can support the podcast, help keep the lights on, help me do them more regularly, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. There are all kinds of ways you can contribute. Some of them involve money. We always love that. But there are a lot of other ways that you can too, such as signing up for the liner notes newsletter that I put out. And one more small housekeeping note. The audio for this episode is also a little wonky. As I do this introduction, I'm listening to the room, the echo here. So I have this new studio space, which is great, but it needs a little work. So I apologize for the echo you're hearing here. And then for the interview sections that you'll hear in the upcoming conversation, it was recorded a long time ago. The audio is not bad, but it was one of my early episodes. And if you've been listening to more recent ones, or you listen to a lot of podcasts, or you're just an audiophile, you may find it a little subpar. But I think it's totally doable. It's a great conversation. And before we get on to my conversation with Lara, I want to share some new music with you guys. One of my good friends, his name is Frank Salazar. I'm not sure if you would want me to say that, because he has a project that he calls Spigots, like a spigot from which water flows. So he has a new song out that was released the 29th of July, 2022, this year. And you can find it on Bandcamp. I will put a link in the show notes, but it's you can find Spigots on Bandcamp at spigots.bandcamp.com, and then find his new track, We Are, there. To give you an idea of what Spigots is all about sonically and musically, they have tagged the project alternative Celtic, progressive rock, alternative pop, and alternative rock. I think that fits pretty well, knowing what I know about the project. And I think you'll enjoy it, so check that out. And then Chris Taylor, who has made a couple of appearances on the podcast, has a project that is new to me. It's not exactly new. In fact, I believe it was released between 2018 and 2019. Maybe right at the end of the year. And it's called Lovers, Thieves, Fools, and Pretenders. Chris simply tags his project alternative. You can find out more about this release at Chris's Patreon, which is Chris Taylor World on patreon.com. I just started listening to it this weekend. It's pretty cool. I like Chris. He's a super creative guy, so check that one out. And then also new to me, it is a brand new video by Ezra Vancil, but it is based on a song that came out on his 2020 release, an album called The Family Songbook. So the video is for a song called Cherry Moon, which you can check out on YouTube. And again, that's Ezra Vancil. The song is Cherry Moon, and I will put a link in the show notes to that. Ezra's also been on the podcast a few times. And speaking of videos, I'm actually working on one for my track New Gods Part 2. I've not yet invested in serious video editing tools, so it's been a bit laborious, and well, hopefully you'll enjoy it. Definitely, maybe that will be out before the next episode. I was going to say before this one, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm really close. I'm not fully happy with it, but I will be soon. When Lara Price and I met in 2001, it was at a blues jam in San Jose. She was running it. It was at a place called JJ's Blues Bar, or JJ's Blues, which no longer exists, was at one time legendary. I think I got to see the tail end of that legendary period. She said there was a lot of learning going on during that time. She wanted to get her own band ready to go out and do some gigs. And she really believes that jam sessions make you a better musician. And it's such a timely topic for me. And actually, I should mention that, which we'll talk about, I played at that first jam when I met her. It was really cool. It's a really timely topic for me, living in Querétaro, Mexico, which is a new place for me. If you follow my weird world, you know that I moved here very recently, and that it's not the first time I've moved to a new country. With that comes a whole new experience of learning the music scene, meeting musicians. And Lara, in our conversation, which took place many, many, many months ago, she makes some excellent points about jams and networking, and she gives advice for running jams and attending one, which is a great refresher for me. I actually would want to start a blues jam here where I am in Querétaro. There does not appear to be one here, although, as Laura says, there's a jam in every country, so maybe I just haven't looked hard enough yet. She says running one can be difficult if you're not organized, which seems pretty obvious, but organization and setting the jammers up to win, whether, putting amateurs with pros a lot of the time is really important. And as she says in our conversation here in this first clip, you have to have a good experience for the jammers and you have to entertain the audience. She ties in how you can get gigs from these. And for me, it's pretty obvious because it did happen for me. Just that one experience of I might have went to her jam a couple of times, but that opened up a whole world for me. And so anytime from there, it became a lot of subbing opportunities for me. And I had my own bands, but subbing was a very similar experience. And as Laura points out, and I think that this has been very much the case for me, that most of the musicians that she still works with today and who were lifelong friends, she met through jams. So here's what Laura and I discussed back when we did the original episode for this conversation. When I moved to San Jose in 99, I was starting all over. And actually, we did not meet in 99. I take that back. I met you a couple of years later because I did not play. I was playing a lot in Dallas-Fort Worth before I moved to San Jose. And one fateful night, a friend encouraged me to go out to JJ's, and there you were with this great band hosting a blues thing. And I'll never forget the night, because I got up and played a couple of songs, and you nicknamed me Dallas. You haven't called me that in a long time, but you nicknamed me Dallas that night and asked me to come back, which was really encouraging for a guy who'd been went from playing every week to not playing for a couple years. And you guys blew me away. Do you remember those days? This is probably more like around 2001, 2002 when you were doing that.
I do remember those days. There's a lot of learning going on, a lot of real drive. And, at that point I wanted to play, JJ's to get my band well greased, and running a jam session is a great way to do that. And then obviously you meet lots of great musicians. Yeah, those are good times at JJ's. I have a lot of fond memories of JJ's, a real soft spot in my heart for that place. And yeah, I do remember all you guys. And it was like I was playing kind of the den mother, as they say, and
you were indeed.
And I do believe that jam sessions make you a better musician. And aside from the obvious networking part of it, which is where I met most of the people that I play with to this day.
Yeah. I haven't talked about jam sessions on the podcast yet. I did talk about them a little bit in my book, because the book kind of starts there. Mm-hmm. And I hear it talked a lot off and on by some guys that I know who do the Modern Drummer podcast. And myself and they have, stories to tell about them, and they're both drummers and quite prolific, but they have a lot of fun stories and advice. So as long as we're talking about it, I want to ask you, because one of the things I want to feature in this podcast is advice from people like you. And this is a bit of a divergence. I didn't expect to get to this part, but we'll just talk about jam sessions for a second. But
sure,
what advice, based on your experiences, would you give to people who are going to host or be part of a house band for a jam session? What advice would you have for them? And same question for people like me who walked in on that, one night that I did, and whether they play guitar or drums and come in and want to sign up and play. What's your best tips for people?
Well, if you're going to run a jam, which I think it can be really difficult if you're not organized. And so that's one of the main things I would say. It's a little bit of there's a little bit of some balancing going on, because there are regular patrons in there, not just musicians. So because you want to keep your gig, and how you keep your gig is you want to keep people there. And the normal average, just music listener that's there, they want to hear some good music. They want to hear what's this guy going to do next? Here's this guitar player that I've never seen. And I think the key to a jam session when you're running one is putting the right people up together. And that doesn't always work out, but if you put a bunch of guys that haven't played together up at the same time, it's probably not going to sound that great. But if you get, an amateur with, a couple veterans to back him up to really, heighten his experience as a musician, it also makes him better, as a musician. But when you're a beginner, you want to be up there with guys or gals that you feel safe with, that are going to have your back. And so I think there's a balancing act of putting the right musicians together, because if you just put a bunch of amateurs together on stage, one, it's going to be a bad experience for the jammer, and for the listener, it could be really, really bad. And you're going to drive all your customers away. And so you want it to be a thing where people come because they're like, man, all these people get together on stage. They don't know each other, but they sound great. And how does that happen? And, the average person that walks off the street, they're just blown away by that fact that we can get up there and say, hey, let's do a blues and, G shuffle. And then you count it off and here we go. And there's some really magical moments that happen that will never probably ever happen again from these experiences. So I think organization and just, setting jammers up to win and playing to the best strength of the musicians. And when you run a jam, you get to know what's this guy's strength. It's this. So you get him with this guy, and I know that your podcast was about getting gigs, and that's what I want to parlay this into is when you're talking to other musicians, you can talk to them about these clubs. And so when you're around your own tribe, you can say, man, I've been trying to get in this club. I don't know what the key is. Like, oh, you got to email this guy. He doesn't like you to just walk in there on a Friday night. You got to email him. Oh, okay. And so, you kind of learn, through your peers, how to get into these clubs and what's going to work best for this person, what's going to work, best for that club, and how to get into this festival. I mean, it's all about the networking. That is really key.
Yeah. I find it interesting, and I'm sure that it has happened with others that you mentioned, that part of your motivation, at least to put it together, the one that we're talking about at JJ's, was to get your feet wet, get your band together, or get a band together. And I'm assuming that worked out because you played a lot. The jam at some point went away, and you were playing a lot, like you said, I think before we came on air here, that you were playing 5 nights a week. And so it sounds like it certainly paid off.
Yeah, it did. And pretty much all the guys that I've met, that I play with, that I consider lifelong friends, I've met at jam sessions. So they can be really fruitful. And if you're just open to, going in there as a jammer and being open to learning, then I think that you can get a lot out of it.
In this next clip, Lara rather, shares her experience recording her then newish album called I Mean Business. There were some big challenges and some real wins, some really great things that came of it. I thought it was good to share here, so you can learn a little bit more about who she is as a recording artist, and you can hear some names that are of really, they're of great importance in the San Jose, California area, and maybe will be to you someday. And why the opportunity to work with a producer for the first time was so important for her. Maybe you can relate, and I just thought it was a really nice piece of the conversation that you should hear. Here's me and Laura again. I should ask you about I Mean Business, the
Sure.
album you put out, and I guess it's 2015 when you released it, right?
Yep.
You recorded this at Greaseland Studios in San Jose?
Yes, I did.
How was it? And tell me about some of the folks that you worked with and how those people came together. Maybe not just the band, obviously the guy who runs Greaseland, but any of the other players that were involved. Can you tell us about how that all came together for you?
Well, it kind of started out a little bit rocky. I actually was recording at a place called Tone Freak, which I recorded the last, 5 albums at his studio. And I just want to go on record to say that, Don Budd at Tone Freak is an amazing engineer. And like I said, I've recorded 5 CDs there, which should give you some kind of, idea that he can be a well-trusted and responsible engineer. Well, I'd gotten halfway through that being said, we'd recorded 6 songs, and there was a terrible, unfortunate issue with the system, and we lost a bunch of tracks. So, long story short, we ended up recording at Greaseland. And part of the reason that, another reason I was able to jump ship is because I wanted a producer also. And so it was kind of this opportunity like, well, since you're starting over, why don't you just start over here, have Kid be producing. I've never had Kid Anderson. I've never had a producer before. Mm-hmm. So Kid Anderson, I met him when he was 21.
Really?
Yep. He came into my jam session at the Fog Bank. I had no idea what I was, that's the thing about, you never know you never know what's going to come out of someone's heart when they walk up on that stage. You just don't know. Mm. So he came in, this big guy, from Norway. Yeah. And he picked up the guitar, and then, of course it was just head snaps all over the place. So anyway, we ended up recording at Greaseland, and it was nice to have a producer and for somebody to say, you know what, that was a great take. Or that, let's do that one again. I think you can do something better. Or, and he took my project with kid gloves, literally. And he handled it with a lot of care and respect. And that when you're in a situation where you're recording, you have to be in a place where you feel comfortable because you're vulnerable. And you're this is your art, and this is what you have to say. And so I felt comfortable there. And it ended up being one of the best recording experiences I've had. And I think not just because of Greaseland, but because of where I was in my life. And I was more comfortable in the studio, which I used to hate recording because, the tape doesn't lie.
Sure.
So it can really make you look in the mirror and go, I didn't think I sounded like that, but I do. Let's work on that.
In this next clip, Lara and I talk about acoustic performances and my question as to why she thinks or thought that some musicians don't do them. She talks about those reasons that she sees and the album that started it all. I wanted to include this because I do think that if you are in a band that plays predominantly electric or as some large ensemble, that doing acoustic performances in like a duo, trio, even a quartet can open up a lot of gig opportunities. And just from my own personal experience, or as Laura touches on too, it really gives you an opportunity to hear what you and your counterparts are doing sonically. And there's no hiding from mistakes. And actually, I think it makes you, and I'm sure Lara would agree, makes you a much better musician. Here is Lara and I on Acoustic Performances. Do you find in the blues scene that there are a number of artists that could but don't play in acoustic settings like you and Lara Chavez did so much of?
Yeah, it's a whole nother element. Yeah. You're quite naked.
That's probably it. I was playing in electric rock and pop bands for a few years in the San Jose area, and the dynamic of, actually shortly after I started playing, the dynamic of commercial lease real estate for venues was rapidly being impacted after the .com scenario played out. Yeah, the dot bomb. And so there was a period of time, but I mean, venue scenes are always changing, but there was a period of time where I was trying to think, okay, there has to be more places to play. And for whatever reason, I looked to wineries, and there are a couple of wineries in the San Jose, that Santa Cruz Appalachian area that in my opinion, sort of opened the door for acoustic vignettes. And so I took the then most popular band I was playing with, as far as the ones I was playing with, and said, let's do this acoustic thing. And they were naturals at it. And so then I did it with several other bands, but I noticed that not all bands in that sort of area, and this is predominantly cover bands that I was doing this with, but they not all of them will do that. Some of them are too big, and they have a tough time downsizing. And I'm not even, I sing, but you are a singer. I'm a drummer, and I did it multiple times. You're a singer. It makes perfect sense that you would, find a guitar player, do a duo or a trio. But why do you think? Is it just the nakedness of it all, or do you think there are other reasons that more bands don't do this, or more artists don't?
I think it's a choice. I mean, I personally love the acoustic element. I love it. And so that, for me, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, I wanted that sound. And so I went to do it. But I also, realized quickly that you can't rely, if you mess up something, you can't rely on someone to take a solo so that you can figure out what has been wrong.
True.
You can't just let the groove milk, for a while you're trying to figure it out. I mean, and same with the guitar, and some fellas actually told me I'm not good with acoustic guitar. I'm not good with, because you are covering so many things. It's rhythmic, it's bass, and it's solos too. And Laura, she was awesome at it. Awesome. I missed her when we weren't doing that duo thing, because what she did, I mean, and I don't know a lot about guitar, but I do know that she covered all those bases and with finesse. And it was very musical, so it didn't sound like, oh, something's missing. But I don't know why other guys don't do it. Maybe they just don't want to.
I have seen or heard before is that many electric players are not comfortable on acoustic, and there is the kind of nakedness of it. And I think for the guys and gals that I brought into it, or worked with to get into it, some of them just hadn't really thought about it. But without fail, the first time they did it with me, they were always saying, "Man, I love this. Can we do it some more?" So
yeah. Well, Eric Clapton Unplugged. I mean, that's where I first fell in love with it. I think they did on MTV or VH1 or something, and that's when I was like, "Wow, that is awesome! I would love to do that." And of course, he had all these, tons of acoustic instruments. I mean, even violins and cellos and stuff, but which would be awesome too. But it's just a sound that I really like, and as a singer, you can purr like a kitten when it's that broken down, or it can be really heartfelt, and you hear some little nuances in a voice that you wouldn't normally hear with a full band.
So true. And that, I don't give enough credit to that whole MTV Unplugged thing, because it really did generate a lot of acoustic recordings and performances, which I'm sure inspired me as well. And that, you kids who haven't seen the Eric Clapton Unplugged or listened to the CD, it's a landmark episode and acoustic CD by a landmark guitar player. So check it out. As I mentioned to Laura when we first spoke, or when we spoke this very first time, for the very first time, how's that? I was curious, and still am, about the music education experiences of my guests on the podcast and what kind of impact they feel like it had on the trajectory of their music journey. She talks about her education, and we segue into her experiences with a label and how they can be helpful, how they are different today than they were once upon a time. Getting back to the music education part, though, she has a bit had a bit of an unusual experience from my vantage point, both in who one of her very first teachers was and also the type of music training that she did. But not to any big surprise, she talks about the importance it had, or how important it was for her in terms of being able to communicate with other musicians, to have the common language with, really, frankly, the higher caliber of musicians that she works with. Here's Lara again.
I have gotten in a habit early on in talking to my people on this podcast in asking about their music education. I saw that you went to, is it Boise State, right? BSU?
I took some operatic lessons at Boise State.
And let me back up, actually. I found this out about you shortly after we met, but you had a celeb piano teacher before BSU, is that right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Howard Jones was my first musical experience, and he's an 80s, innovator.
How is it that you met him that you guys
famous.
And where were you, though?
I was living in England because I was an Air Force brat. We lived in England for 3 years, and he was a guy. He was a musician, obviously a guy. He was a musician giving music lessons on the side while he was, trying to get his career off the ground. And so my mother actually saw him last year and, had some words with his wife. And he's remembered us because my mom would pay music lesson money, even though we didn't go sometimes because she knew he was a struggling artist.
Oh, that's so cool. And then you, at some point later, did the operatic voice stuff at BSU?
I did. Yep. I did some operatic training there, which I feel like, that was the ballet of music for me. It was, the groundwork and the basic training that you need to do other genres, because it taught me how to breathe and how to not hurt my voice. And it taught me how to sing in another language with a piano.
This explains a lot because your voice and your technique are, they're fantastic. And you just gave me an example of the impact it had for you. And that's why I like asking about the education facet, just to find out how you performers and songwriters and engineers feel that your education impacted where you are. Are there other aspects of your education and perhaps some parts of it that I didn't mention that you feel had an impact?
I've always, I feel like I'm just a lifelong, I'll take classes forever. So I've taken lots of guitar lessons. I've taken drum lessons.
I've seen you play drums. You're pretty good.
Thank you. I did a stint at Cabrillo with a choir. I mean, I think all these things help you articulate what you need to do to communicate with other musicians. And I just like to challenge myself too and learn a new instrument. And it's never too late to learn. I'm still trying to learn the guitar. It's very difficult. It's painful. Like literally physically hurts. I have a long way to go by far. But I mean, at least, I like to learn about stuff just from mostly just because I want to communicate with other musicians what I need as a band leader or a singer,
Yeah.
So I can talk the same language.
Yeah. I know this is something that a lot of musicians would say. Now the catalog is not deep yet, but you're the first I've talked to about it who has mentioned that the common language and helping you articulate, and the fact that you took drum lessons too. I think, oh wow, yeah, you're. I mean, it's not any different for guitar or bass, is it? But I can see where it would all help a great deal. So
absolutely,
cool.
Yeah,
well, I'm sure you're going to be a great guitar player and probably already sounding pretty good. You give me hope that I'll be able to pick it back up and learn it again. So
It's hard.
Yeah. I've been trash talking in my head about doing it, and I really would like to. So.
You should try it.
I will. Did you use the VizTone label for? I'm jumping around here for I Mean Business?
Yes, and I will credit that to Lara Chavez. She's the one who put me in touch with Richard Rosenblatt, who discovered Susan Tedeschi. So who's one of the reasons I felt like I could sing the blues is when I heard her stuff, to be honest. in the beginning. I could really relate with her. But anyway, yes, VizTone label group. It's being on a record label doesn't mean what it used to,
Right.
but it doesn't hurt. And I would not have gotten all the, accolades had it not been for this label. I believe that. And a great record.
And tell for, myself and others who are unfamiliar with what labels are doing these days, and if you want to touch on the differences of today, and I know it's been evolving for quite a while, but I think most importantly to kind of tell people what's happening with them today and what maybe some of the specifics about how they have helped and maybe if we have enough time, the process of engaging with them. Can you talk about that?
Well, it's a distribution deal. And so what's nice about it is they get it out to the people, and they have a list, and it's a list that's been catered and, curtailed to what we do. So when you give them, say, 500 of your CDs, which is a lot of product, they're going to send it to the right people. And they have a publicist. And she also, works the radio play and follows up with the newspapers and the magazines that you hope to be written up well in, because you don't know what people are going to say.
Sure. Some of them are going to say shitty stuff for sure, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere. Okay.
some are, and you can't really let that bother you.
No.
Because it's just one person.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think of a bad review that I've had, and I'm sure I've had some, but maybe I just blocked them out.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
But being on VizTone, what's great about it also is that you're on a label with other artists that you know who they are. Mm-hmm. So you're in good company, I guess is what I'm saying. So you could be on the, Red Dog label who nobody knows who's on this label. But VizTone, I chose to go with VizTone because there were a bunch of artists on there that were touring globally, and I wanted to be in the same company as those people. I feel like it's led to the nomination for the Soul Blues Singer of the Year. All these little steps that I took have helped, and it takes a village to do this. It's not just me doing it. It takes a village. I'm at the helm, but it takes a village, and you got to surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
To give you the right information.
In this next segment of our conversation, Laura talks about embracing accolades and some really good networking advice that is related. She has encouragement for those of us who find networking a bit difficult, such as knowing that you're among your tribe, and talks about why being proud of your accomplishments and being confident make a big difference. Here's me and Laura again.
Speaking of accolades, I noted one before we got on today and wanted to congratulate you. And maybe you just told me about another one, or perhaps we're referring to the same, but you were nominated in this year's Blues Awards category for Soul Blues Female Artist. Congratulations.
Yeah, I was in the same running as Betty LaVette and Mavis Staples.
Pretty awesome.
So, losing to Mavis Staples is like the biggest win I've had in my career. Seriously. I mean, it would be a little weird if I won, to be honest with you, even if it was by a vote. Like some weird thing happened, and I don't know. I was actually kind of nervous. I'm like, please don't by a fluky thing win, because it would just be too weird.
Yeah, you see these people who feel weird when they won over someone and can't help but mention it. But I'm sure you would have been quite deserving to win, and I will not be surprised to see you win that category very soon.
Well, Betty LaVette performed, and I actually voted for her because Mavis Staples has been getting a lot of love lately. I mean, she got an award by President Obama, and so I wanted Betty LaVette to win this time, but she didn't. But, even her, she was probably disappointed, I don't know. I'd love to hear her side of that.
We'll have to ask her. So it sounds like it was a fun time, though, to go to the ceremony.
Oh, gosh, it was great. It was great. Another networking moment,
I never thought of that. So tell
It's
me about,
huge.
tell us.
It's huge.
Yeah, tell us about that. I just figured it was kind of a fun party, but of course it would be. So what happened?
It's both.
Yeah, what happened
both.
on the networking front? Then you can tell us about the party front.
Well, it's both. It's really both. And it's about the hang, and it's about, all of the who's who in the blues are going to be there. And, from all over the world. And there's going to be agents there, and there's going to be, festival buyers, and you name it, they're there. And so it's the kind of place where you want to have all your cards. And yes, it's exhausting. And I know not all of us feel socially, comfortable all the time, but it's just something you have to do. It's business. Like in any business, networking is the key to getting a job.
Sure.
In any business, it really
So
is.
true.
So music business, it's the same. And so you try to sit in, and I call jam sessions like speed dating for musicians. So you get up there and you're like, ooh, I like the way he plays, or I like the way she plays. And let's do a gig together, and you continue your relationship. And it's the same thing, but it's at another level, because these musicians, they've already been playing for decades and decades, and sometimes decades.
Sure.
and even more. And they've already played all over the world. And so you still want to give a good impression, and you never know. You might be in Europe and you met so-and-so and he plays there and he has a band. You can hire him for a show that you do there, or a tour. So it's all good. I mean, you're going to meet agents, and you're going to meet, so you have to just go with a real open mind and put on your friend face and do it. Even though I know a lot of people, artists in particular, I don't know, maybe people, they just don't dig doing that kind of stuff, but it's kind of necessary.
Sure. Did you learn anything new from this particular event where networking is concerned? Because, like you said, it was a little different in that there's the who's who there, and
that's my cat.
Hello, Katie.
I met a lot of new people, and you can make some lifelong friends. And the Blues Music Awards put myself with a bunch of women musicians that I didn't really know on stage for the opener.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, it was really cool, but terrifying at the same time, because here you are in a jam situation, right? You're going to be with pros, but, so it's like, okay, do a song off your record. None of my songs on the record are 1-4-5. So it was a gamble to put it out there, but the ladies did amazing. So, I learned a lot from that, just to let some things go about performing.
That sounds like a great experience.
They're going to work themselves out. And, it's terrifying getting up in front of a bunch of, more veterans at an event like that.
How many people were in attendance?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. Like 1,000.
That's a good crowd.
And they're all in your industry.
Sure.
It's not just drunk people having a good time and they don't know if you mess up. It's people that know.
Yeah. Well, here's a great advice question for you. If you have any, for musicians that truly would like to be better at it, or know they should be better at that whole networking thing, should they find themselves nominated for some award at the Blues Awards, what advice would you give?
Well, I feel like it's about confidence. For me, it was about confidence. And when I look inside what has happened to me in the last year with this record, when you have a little wind in your sail, like a nomination with, Betty LaVette and Mavis Staples, it's okay to walk a little bit, with a little bit more pep in your step, because you've been recognized for a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. And I always feel like I don't usually like to wave the braggy flag and be that person. But it's, I think that it's okay to be real proud of what you've done, and acknowledge to yourself that, hey, it is really difficult what we're doing in the music business. And just, be yourself and I don't know, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It's always, everyone, every musician I've always talked to feels socially awkward. And so to get a bunch of socially awkward people in a room, you know, it's, I guess, just to knowing that you're around your own tribe. That's what's comforting to me.
A good friend of mine, her name's Elizabeth Miner. She's a life coach, but she's had some experience in music, in that she was managing and married to an artist, songwriter, singer. But more to the life coaching point, she had recently written in a blog post just a great reminder, which echoes exactly what you said, that confidence is good. And sometimes for a lot of us, I know that confidence can be tough to find, but we're always, she tried to remind me that we're always doing things. It wasn't written to me, but she was reminding the readers that we're always accomplishing things, but we're not always good at, giving ourselves a little pat on the back and not bragging, but, just acknowledging it and enjoying it and rivaling in it. And so, that's great advice, I think.
Being present with what you've done.
Yeah.
And I think that, you get to a point and then it's like, now what? Then you want to get to the next point. You never really reach your goals because you reach one goal and then you have another goal, right? And where's the top? There isn't one.
In this final segment, Laura and I cover some great reminders that she offers on marketing, including the importance of wearing the marketing, business, and branding hats, something we need to do as independent musicians, how it's proven to be another creative outlet for her, the fact that it should be fun, and we get into the weirdness that can happen with the online part of it, the social media part of it. And I think it's a good discussion. I think it'll be a helpful one for many of you. And she shares some great final advice on the topic. Again, here's me and Laura.
I always feel like if somebody wants to be a musician, they should take, some courses in psychology and marketing classes and business classes, because don't take music classes. Go out and live those at the jam sessions. But go to school and get a major in marketing and a minor in psychology, because that's what you're going to need to do the music part.
Wow, yeah.
But marketing, it is about marketing yourself and not being afraid to put yourself out there. Like you put on the business hat and you post videos of yourself, you post, an ad of yourself, and you have to just let that go, that you're not egotistical. You're marketing yourself. You're branding yourself. So you just put on the business hat. And so with social media, man, it's endless. You get on all those social media, get on Facebook, get on Instagram, get on Snapchat, get on Twitter, and just brand yourself. And I went to school for digital publishing so that I could build my own website. And so I wouldn't have to pay somebody to, put text on a photo. And those kinds of things have helped me. It saved me a lot of money. And it's another creative outlet if you don't want to, talk to people. you can just be at your computer creating a poster.
Wow.
So I think that some people, don't feel comfortable writing about themselves or putting their face on, but it's a necessity. You have to market. And with social media, that's what's on fire. YouTube, you gotta, and what makes things go viral, nobody seems to know right now, but you hope that your one little video or some post will go viral,
Yes. For anyone who's listening that does feel like that's weird to be on video and have your face everywhere, and this whole idea of branding, there's something, a concept I've become very familiar with and passionate about, and am embarking on currently, in which is personal branding for the sake of putting one's face on their business, or in what we're talking about here, on your music, and putting your personality and your voice on it, and not just your singing voice, but the point being, folks, so that people who are naturally going to like you can find you. And those I know that like you, Lara, are following you because of not only your wonderful music, but also because of your personality that they've been able to see because you did these things. And it's kind of fun, right?
It should be fun. It should be fun. And I know that we're kind of in this narcissistic culture right now, but
Yes.
For a business person, this is what you have to do. And it's okay.
Yep.
It doesn't, doesn't make you a bad person. It's marketing. And so you just have to kind of put yourself out there. And I remember the first CD I put out, I was somewhere. I was getting it printed. And the guy who I picked up the CDs from said, "Wow, your face is on the front. How vain." And so guess what? My second CD did not have my face on there. It had a painting that I painted a painting and put that on there instead because I listened to this idiot. And it's like, you know what? Just, I don't know. Don't listen to stuff like that. And don't let people say that you can't do something. I mean, I'm a Vietnamese person singing blues music.
Yes, you are.
I mean, there's not a lot of Asian people, I don't think, singing the blues right now.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any, but I'm sure there are, but maybe I just don't know who they are. Maybe, I don't know. But I mean, it's difficult from that aspect for me too. You just keep going because you like it.
Well, kind of as we were alluding to earlier, there are always going to be the haters and the negative comments. So just know it's going to happen, people. And like Lara says, don't pay too much attention to it. Don't put too much stock into it. So.
Yeah, don't let people rain on your parade.
I hope you enjoyed that rewind conversation with Lara Price. There are links to the related episodes, which include some great conversations that I've had with other indie artists and with Lara Price multiple times, including the full conversation that was the basis for this rewind episode. That episode was recently re-edited by yours truly. The audio's, it's the early days, I'll just say that, but I think you'll enjoy it. It's a cool, fun conversation. This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the platform for musicians and bands to build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features powerful design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, and tickets, detailed fan data, integrations with social networks, and more. Plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes a free custom domain name. Try it at bandzoogle.com and use the promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code ROBONZO. If you love what I do, if you find value in what I do here on the podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor or the show notes for this episode to learn about options for offering your support. The Unstarving Musician accepts direct financial support, and we very much appreciate it, but there are several other ways to support the podcast and help keep it going. Again, you can learn more about those options for supporting the Unstarving Musician podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. Did you know you can help other independent musicians find the Unstarving Musician by following or subscribing on your audio platform of choice? Well, now you do, and it really does help. And if you have feedback, please go to unstarvingmusician.com to get all my contact info. You can text me, call me, email me, leave a voice message right there on that page. Just go down to the bottom of the page and you'll find everything you need to know. I really would love to hear any of your comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you've got. And you can find links to just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. All right, I'm peacing out. Thank you for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music fans. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.